Class, welcome back to As the CMMC Churns. Your teacher today is me, Matt Tidcombe, the CEO of Peak InfoSec, unauthorized C3PO, and I'm also a CMMC provisional assessor. Today's lesson is verbs. Mrs. Tenney, somewhere my English teacher from high school, would be very proud that I still remember what that is. First and foremost, congratulations to the Avs, whoop whoop, for winning the Stanley Cup last night. We beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, 21 years in coming back, awesome. So again, congratulations to the Avs. Now let's get back onto the lesson plan. So we're here to talk about verbs. Primarily, we're really going to be talking about assessment objective verbs. Now I've highlighted all the verbs that are primarily playing in the assessment objective level here with underlines. Now, the very first verb you see, determine, is actually used for assessors. Nowhere else does that verb show up in anything you have to do as an organization seeking compliance. The rest of these are your action verbs. Whether you're defining, preventing, or concealing, and in this case, for a screensaver, those are things that you are expected to be doing as actions to implement this control. Okay? So it seems like, okay, that's not important. It really gets a lot more important as we keep going on. So the important thing is, I have too much time on my hands. So one of these days I actually sat down and went, let's go grab all the verbs that are in the assessment objectives. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Sad life. Now, these are all the verbs that are in there, and you can see 4 made bigger. Why? Well, these are the organizationally defined verbs. And we're going to spend a lot more talking about these 4 in the next slides. All of the other ones are your organizationally implemented verbs. These are the ones you need to follow through and actually execute based on what you've defined. So as we go through this, why do you keep saying organizationally defined? Well, let's jump to the future. So the screenshot you've got up here on the image up here is coming from NIST 800-172. Okay, that's published. Well, as you'll see up here in that top right corner of there's something called an organizationally defined parameter. Your assignment in 172 is to actually define a frequency. Okay, guess what? That came from NIST 853 Rev 5. That shouldn't be a 3, that should be a 5 on there, sorry. So that parameter definition started first in Rev 3 of Rev 5 of 853. Blah. Moved to 800-172. Guess what 800-171 Rev 3 is going to look like? Bingo. So organization-defined parameters are those things that you set as an organization that then you technically implement in your systems, people, and processes and procedures. Okay? So this is kind of critical as we go through this, and we're going to come back to ODPs quite a bit in upcoming sessions. Now let's talk about ODPs in 171A. Well, they're not technically there, but they are. So your very first ODP is right here. Define the period of inactivity. You have to set that. Your organization has to technically set that configuration setting. What is it? What is the standard? Where is it documented? How are you maintaining it? All of the other ones all define fundamentally your implementing of that ODP. Now, just a little professional side note here, you can actually have multiple ODPs for this control. You can actually do it for pretty much all of them, and if you need to specify it, you do. In this case, you may want to say, typical desktop worker PC, 15-minute timeout. That industrial control system over there that is used between shifts has got an 8-hour timeout. Probability of a timeout, because you're running 24/7 ops, very low. So again, these are things that you are setting and establishing. Now, when we look at this, Identify is the primary one. Now, identify is a lot of time. Identify the user, identify this, identify, settings, etc. You're responsible for a lot of identification, a lot more than you think it is. And it's beyond just a lot of times people say, well, I've got Active Directory and that's good enough to identify. No, because then I start poking holes and people haven't really looked and understood what is being asked in the assessment objectives. Defined is the next major one. Defined is hard and fast something that is a configuration setting, a parameter that you need to establish can get implemented on one or more system component types. Establish is a little bit of a fuzzy one. There are times establish is very much an ODP, something that needs to be defined and decided upon. Sometimes it's just doing. So that one's a little bit on the fence side. Specify is like defined. Again, this is something, a configuration setting, your screensaver, etc. You need to specify this in order to implement it. So again, these are major things that organizations right now are not doing properly because you've not properly made decisions, you've not documented decisions, and you've not implemented decisions consistently. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So what about all of the other verbs? Again, as I said, your job is to go implement what your organization has defined, established, identified, or specified. All of those other verbs, you're just doing. And that's a critical thing for you to understand as we get into all the other things you need to do to get your organization ready to be certified. Now, question, how do we set our ODPs? Well, first, you need to use your governance function to establish each one. Have a configuration management board. We don't use that term. We call them IT steering groups. We have leadership involved across the company because this is not an IT decision. This is an organization decision. You need to document all of this in your configuration management plan. Then you need to manage all of your changes for each ODP over time per your management plan. And then lastly, provide it as evidence in your certification event. Everywhere you see those verbs, I'm going to ask, where and how did you define that? And then my next question is going to be, did you implement it? So again, that document is critical because you need to provide it to me. Now, a lot of companies, we're using OneNote. We recommend using OneNote. It's simple. We've seen Confluence. We've seen Word docs. It's whatever works best for you. We like OneNote. It's kind of easy. You could also do this if you've got it in ServiceNow, and some very big, complicated tools can handle all of this also. So again, I'm Matt Titcomb. Thank you for joining us today for the CMMC Churns, and we'll see you next time.